Hello, welcome to today's Innovation Masterclass. Hello, welcome. We'll just let the people get joined in, get you connected to audio. Hopefully you can hear some sound as you're getting joined in today. Thank you so much for joining today's Innovation Masterclass. My name is Edward Pollock and I am the Startup Coordinator here at RGU. And we'll get started in just a few minutes. And in today's session, we are going to be going in a time machine, exploring what the future might look like. Now, you have joined university at a very interesting time. Hopefully you've found freshers exciting so far today already. And you are joining when everything is going to be very different. You know, we're going to be so used to different technologies, different ways of working. And our department, the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group at RGU, is going to be able to take you hopefully on that journey to coming up with the ideas that will help us solve some future challenges. And in today's presentation, I'm hoping to give you a spark of inspiration and ideas for what that future might look like and what might be involved. So while we just wait for a couple of people, hopefully you can hear me and hear the sound, and we'll let people get joined in just a second. Okay, so while the music's come to an end there, I will get started. So thank you so much for joining us today. Excuse me if I keep having to look over and adding people into the session. In the next sort of 30-40 minutes, I'm hopefully going to take you on a bit of a journey on this time machine to look at what 2040 will look like and the exciting opportunities that your course can have. Our department, RGU, is all about helping people become entrepreneurs and innovators, and we do that through a series of programs and events. So we run masterclass sessions such as this, where you get the opportunity to hear from speakers. We run skills sessions where we give you practical bite-sized information about how you can develop entrepreneurial skills. And we also run a startup accelerator and training programs. So if you're at university and you've ever thought about setting up a business, then we are here to try and help you do that. So hopefully through these sessions, you get a chance to explore something slightly different. In today's session, you don't necessarily need to have your camera or microphone on, but we will be doing some interactive thing at the end to get your insight, but mostly you have the chance to listen to myself and share our experiences. You're welcome to use the chat function if you have any questions, and we'll come through to them at the end. And we have a bunch of other events happening throughout the week as well, so don't worry, there's plenty going on. So hopefully we are all ready and you can hear me. If there's any messages, let me know. But let's get started. Let us journey into the future. We're in our time machine and we're going to travel to 2040. So we're in a world that is very different in 2020, but how could that change in 2040? Let's see as we travel into the future. So I'm taking you through a day in my life in 2040. So I'm going to start off my day in my vertical building because at that time, land has become so precious by the time we get to 2040. And in urban centres, you're thinking, well, what is that going to look like? It's going to change very dramatically. We're now starting to see more vertical housing with sustainable materials becoming the norm. So the rural communities that a lot of people live in are now becoming a lot more urban, a lot more central. But how do we use the space in our city centres better? So I wake up, gorgeous, nice plant building that we're going to be using there. And my job as I come into my day is I'm getting up in the morning and my job is going to be a drone controller in 2040. Now we know drones are very social at the moment, but actually there's a big opportunity for them to be used in policing, in mail, in deliveries, luxury travel as well. So by 2040, my job is to try and make sure that all of these drones have somewhere to go, somewhere to be, and they're safe. But a challenge that I typically have is that that's not my only job. By 2040, our careers have changed so much that we all have different types of careers. So you're no longer going to have a single job because we have so many skills and talents and so many varieties. Think back to your grandparents' generation today. They typically worked in an organization for the same period of time. They started as an apprentice and they maybe worked their way up to become a manager. That's not how things are done now. even today, we all have multiple careers. You're going to graduate and go from job to job to job. By 2040, that will be so much more commonplace. We work on projects, we work on smaller things, but also there's greater demand for creativity. So as well as my day-to-day job as a drone controller, I'm also a freelance.
Right, I don't think there's been any further questions for this session.
Okay, so apologies for that. We also are going to be a freelance AR designer, augmented reality. Our world is structured very differently. We see things differently. So today you might be a graphic designer making posters. That's not so much the case for the future. So my creative skills require me to create designs, posters, videos, graphics, and implement augmented reality platforms. The next thing in my day is I'm now trying to think, well, the world is going to need a lot more entrepreneurs. Because today, think about it, these massive companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon are far more in control of our daily lives. So think by the future, what will the typical company structure look like? Will there be less trust and more regulations for these giant companies? You know, for thousands of years, everybody was their own entrepreneur. They farmed their own wheat, they made their own food, they made their own products, they traded them. That was how society worked for thousands of years. And today we're used to this big corporate structure. But actually, as people become less and less trusting potentially of those corporate structures, maybe there's going to be a lot more entrepreneurs. You've seen it in this coronavirus pandemic. How many people have you seen on TikTok or on social media starting up their own side hustle? Well, in 2040, that's going to be far more prominent. We all want more control over our day, over our lives. So yes, you're joining RGU at a time where it's well known for its employability, but our job in entrepreneurship is, well, actually, maybe you could create your own job for the future. And we don't always need to be led by other people when we go into these things. So by 2040, my job, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm keen to set up and control my own business in the future. Now, one of the things I've been designing is augmented reality posters, and I came up with this really cool concept where actually, if you see your competitors' adverts, they can automatically erase themselves and burn and be able to be your own company's advert. So for example, McDonald's, no, I work for advertising for Burger King, and my augmented reality is able to automatically change that depending on when you see that. Now, actually, this example is actual cell phone footage from this decade. It's not even 2040. So think about the advertising we see in the world around us by the future. How will that be automated, personalized, changed? So if you're studying marketing or communications and you're traditionally thinking, oh, it'll be TV adverts or media adverts or social media, well, by 2040, it could be something very differently. But also you'll notice that this advert's in Spanish. And that's because by 2040, our population of the world has changed so dramatically that some of our more popular language, it is still English, it's still a business language, but actually Spanish and Chinese have become far more prominent in day-to-day society, and even countries in Asia and Africa are the major global superpowers by 2040, and Europe and America are slightly less significant in that future world as things have changed. So as I'm doing my augmented reality designing, I'm going to have to do a little bit more to try and introduce different languages into my designs. So the other thing that is going on in my day is that I have to design these ads based on data. We're used to seeing our social media today shaped by our Facebook feeds, and they know so much scary information about who we are. But actually, when I'm walking around and I'm designing augmented reality adverts, it's very personalized. The adverts you see change in the real world based on information you know, with facial ID tracking, with your computers and phones right next to you. There's actually so much possibility for adverts to be personalized to you. Slightly more invasive. So it's a bit scary. There was, back in the 2030s, there was a big debate over whether this should be allowed. But actually, you know, people have to give that information over, and that's how I have to design. That's my life, is we are used to that infiltration of our data being used to target us. So what could advertising and marketing look like by that 2040? But when that was all kicking off in 2030s, actually something changed. There was a bit of a challenge, because where the big assets were, you know, previously oil or wages or things like that, these companies, when they were using something, if they were using something like value-added tax that you'd have on products or services, well, actually, the big thing these companies are starting to use now is our personal data. is Facebook and all these other companies are profiting off of our information. You know, when we sign up to theirs and they know what we're interested in, well, actually, they should be accountable for what they're doing. So back in the 2030s, I predict that there'll be a data tax. These companies will have to pay a penalty if they try to use too much personal data. They should only have the data that they genuinely need or that they are allowed to use. And the more data they have, the more manipulation they have over the population, the more they have to pay, the more they are taxed on that. And that disincentivizes companies from using our data in slightly negative ways. Obviously, this presentation is my predictions for the future, and I'll be asking yours at the end too. But how could we control this data society we're living in? It's very interesting what information we're giving out and what information is available. So maybe a data tax is one way that we could solve that potential problem by the future. So I'm waking up, it's 2040, I'm away to do my busy day job of controlling drones, I'm designing data, I've got all these numbers, and I wake up and our smart houses have got incredibly smart. Think about just a couple of years ago, we never even had Google's or Alexa's or smart lights in our house, but now it is embedded throughout our whole building, our whole lives. So my artificial intelligence, my Google or my Alexa, is able to sense when I'm waking up, it knows what I'm thinking, and it's able to start turning the lights on, to start cooking breakfast and start cooking traveling. It's automated, it's natural, it doesn't feel as invasive because it's really helping me out. So quite handy, the lights are lighting up as I'm walking around the house. And my breakfast is 3D printed. Absolutely buzzing. I'm happy for this. I don't need to deal with it. It just comes out exactly when you want it to. And we have this new technology now. Now, not everything's 3D printed by 2040, but it is a nice handy thing. The same way you have coffee machines or Roombas to do your cleaning, this is a nice little gadget that you can have at home, but it's not quite infiltrated the full food market because tends to be not very healthy stuff that gets 3D printed. They're not quite able to get the fiber and nutrition of fresh fruit and vegetables 3D printed. But it is a quick, handy thing. The same way that coffee capsules have been a quick, easy solution, maybe 3D printed food is that solution when we look to the future. And as I'm waking up, I decide to head to the building gym because, of course, you've still got to keep fit in 2040. It's a bit of a pain. Now, there was this thing, what was it called? It was back in the 2020s. Oh, it was the coronavirus. That's what it was. It was a right pain in the arse, and everything had to change. So I remember that was the time when everything had to become a lot more individualized. So the gyms used to be these big open rooms with loads of machines and lots of people working out. But now you have to book everything, even up to 2040s. Unfortunately, there's not been the only pandemic. There's, you know, a lot of globalization and different changes that we've seen over the 2030s. So I've actually got to book my gym space, but it's personalized to me. My artificial intelligence tells me how much I need to work out, what workouts I need to do, and it sort of plans it all out for me, which is annoying, but, you know, pretty handy at least. At least I know a little bit about what I need to get done, and it gives me a track. So fair enough, that's not so bad. Now, as I head back to my apartment, my mail is arriving, but again, this coronavirus thing that happened all those years ago and the many viruses since, unfortunately, mean that everything has to be very sterile and organized as we come into our house. So instead of having these delivery drivers who necessarily might not always be sterile, the building is equipped with these lovely pods that sterilize and post our items straight up to us in our apartments in a vertical building. So pretty handy to have that available to us as we get ready for our day. So I'm going about my day in 2040 and my assistant has ordered a pod to my door. The subscription service is driverless, it's all automated, it's all electric, and it comes to my door and I'm able to just walk in with my Face ID. So I don't need to give them my name or information. It knows exactly who I am. And I can pay instantly with cryptocurrency because we are contactless. Again, no cash, no need to deal with the potential drivers. It's completely changed things. The skills required are a lot more technical and scientific rather than, you know, simply just driving. And weirdly, while this video looks very futuristic, this is actually Heathrow Airport at the moment. So this technology does exist. And companies like Uber that we're used to seeing disrupt maybe the taxi market are interested in disrupting this entire automobile market. So their vision for the future is, well, why do people need to buy cars at all? What if we just buy journeys? If it's just getting from A to B? And that's what they're trying to see evolve into, that these connection points. You know, you use the platform and you could get any car, any form of transport just from A to B, and you never need to own the product itself. There's this move towards not owning things anymore, and that's continued in the way that we get about by 2040. So pretty handy. I just need to get in. You know, I've already had my 3D printed breakfast, so off I go on my way. And I don't have any contacts with surfaces. Again, there's a lot more sterile society, as you can imagine. So luckily we've got all these fancy automated gates and machines, because I'm able to just get about, open the doors, and don't need to touch things so much anymore, which is, you know, pretty handy in the way that the world's changing. So imagine if you're an architect in 2020, what would you have to design and build? Imagine if you're involved in creating new products and services. How can you make them contactless if the world is going in that direction? There's a lot of insight that you might be able to think about what that future could look like. Now, unfortunately, I'm in my pod, I'm on my way to work, and there is a bit of a delay getting in. Robot construction teams have decided to build a new bridge, and human architects have designed it, but the pod has had to take a detour because they've decided to build it overnight. Now, luckily, this doesn't mean that there's big, noisy human builders with their builder's bum showing and making a mess. Actually, they have these 3D printing robot machines that are able to build the bridges in far less time. What takes a couple of days now used to, I remember back in the 2020s, would take weeks and months for them to be able to build these things. And construction's a very different world as it is then. And actually, this is the Hadrian X robot, and it exists in 2020, but the technology has come on a long way since 2040, especially with these concrete printing Mars robots that you see about. So as I go about my day, there's a lot of change in the way that the world is working in 2040. So I'm getting on my way to work, and actually work is very different by 2040. So where things have changed is actually my company isn't necessarily the same company structures you've seen anymore. So I have no boss. So I'm a drone controller, but I don't necessarily have a boss. Our team makes decisions together. So we are a cooperative organization. We decide as a group what hours we want to work. We approve promotions as a group, and we kind of run the business together. We're responsible to each other. There isn't big owners and big commercial, because unfortunately back in the 2030s, these single owners of companies, your Jeff Bezoses and your Mark Zuckerbergs with their trillions of and billions and trillions of personal wealth, was outlawed, and they had to have much more taxes because there was such a disparity in society between the rich and the poor. So companies and business had to change to be more receptive, and that actually meant that there was less incentive to actually own the businesses in some way, because everybody had to be treated a lot more fairly. So these cooperative businesses, not every business is like that in 2040, it is just some, but it gives us a level of control and fairness where, yes, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but not everybody can. So they can be in more control of their actual work environment. So I decide today, I come in and I speak to the colleagues and I put it in the group space that I'm going to work from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. today. Pretty cool. I'm in charge, not so bad. So my job, controlling these drone traffic. I have to work with the companies to make sure that they're not bumping into each other, that the deliveries are arriving in time, that there's technical teams going out there to deal with any drone incidents like battery failures or storm damage. And actually storm damage is pretty intense. Oh gosh, that's a very intense storm by the look of that one. Is because there's a lot more dangerous weather. Unfortunately, by 2040, we have not got climate change under control. You know, the governments didn't take it seriously enough back in the 2020s. And unfortunately, there is massive natural disasters and floods and wildfires every year. The temperatures are rising, and we actually now have to pay a disaster relief tax every year because the government is constantly dealing with floods and natural disasters to deal with things. And drone deliveries are constantly being disrupted by these natural disasters. Let's get off that crazy slide. So it's pretty intense. Now I'm at work and I'm dealing with these. Luckily, there's been no storms today, so I'm getting quite an easy day. The deliveries are working quite clear, but I get an alert, bing, bing, from the government, because we now are all signed up to the government phone network, and actually we are required to vote on various key issues every day or every week. We don't necessarily have local representatives anymore because we're having to move about so much and we travel, and because we were never really engaged with them. So actually, we elect candidates into the big key government roles. We had a lot of civil unrest back in the 2030s, and we now have a lot more control over who is making decisions in the government. Because unfortunately, as we saw back in 2020s, everything became a lot more polarized. You know, with the way that social media was working and the way that political parties were working, what used to become quite a centered politics, you know, we used to have, you know, fairer compromises. Now, everybody on the right-wing side was fighting so much more with everyone on the socialist left-wing side, and it became so complicated. Every year, when a new government took power, they would just reverse everything that the old government used to do, and nothing was ever changing. One government would decide something and the next government would change it all again. And for the people, that just was not working at all. Now, different countries took this very differently. Unfortunately, in the future, some companies had civil wars because they just weren't able to form genuine parliaments or genuine decision making. So they had to change that. But some countries decided that the people would take more control and have more direct democracy and decide what would actually happen. And that's what's happened in my predictions, by the way, to the UK, is that we have to now compulsorily vote on these key issues. So today's vote is that we are increasing the jet engine tax. Do we increase this or not? Now, obviously, climate change, the average temperature, including the winter months, is now up to about 27 degrees in the UK, just because of the various changing weathers. The planet is quite badly damaged. But we do have super fast trains and electric planes and electric cars, so there's less need for the jet engines. So the proposal today is that we are going to try and tax them so that if you take a jet engine flight rather than a shorter electric flight, yes, jet engines can take you further, but the electric ones are better for the environment. You have to pay more for that convenience. So I say yes. I don't travel massively internationally anymore anyway, so it's not so bad for me. So I vote for that. Now, I'm going to head to the shops for my lunch, which is quite good. Again, this coronavirus thing happened, and it meant that contactless was a lot more required when we went into our shops. So I head into these, they're essentially walk-in vending machines. You take whatever you want off the shelves and you put them in your basket and you walk out, and the sensors on the roof are able to detect what you've taken, and you walk immediately out the store and it automatically bills your account. You put something back, again, it automatically bills your account. So there's less need for the kind of lower level human work in these types of places like taxis or shops, because there's less younger people to do it. We've got this aging population. So, and actually, as you probably know, that is a real life store. That video was taken from in 2020. It's an Amazon Go. It's their new concept for stores. So instead of you having to shop about, actually you go in and you're able to grab stuff without having to deal with kind of workers. And actually, for those who are maybe involved in fashion or tourism or retail or anything like that, shops are very different now, because the high streets were very much dying out in the 2020s. So they had to innovate, they had to come up with something different. And now shopping is very much like an experience. So actually, a shopping mall is a lot more like a Disney theme park than it ever used to be. You don't go to a shopping mall to buy stuff, because it's far more quick, easier, and convenient to buy it online. But you go there for the experience of interacting with displays, there's performances, there's attractions, there's entertainment, everything's really personalized to you. So if you go into a shop, you don't see a big range of potential sizes. You are automatically sized, and someone comes and gives you a personalized service and gives you the products that they already know that you're going to want. So it's a lot more engaging as a shopping experience than just snipping in and buying stuff. And the high streets are very different. The smaller high street stores have suffered really badly. There's these big mega mall complexes that are like amusement parks that have taken over and kind of killed a lot of the high street. But at least it's still an experience that people are getting to go for. Now, I've come back from my lunch, I've been from my shop, I've got a few bits and bobs, it's 2040, I'm having a great time in life. And after lunch, I decide to join my problemology class. Now, we are all required to learn regularly. So actually, education has changed very much. There isn't so much a 4-year degree anymore. Actually, you're expected to continue learning throughout your entire career. And you're going to have so many career changes that actually you have to constantly keep upskilling and changing yourself and learning new technologies. And the skills that we are needed for the future are not necessarily subject specific. So yes, you can still do research into particular subjects like fashion or computing, but it's about the skills. It's about solving problems, so problemology, or it's about being creative, or it's about coming up with ideas. So my problemology class is very international. It's all done online, and I'm with people from all around the world. And our task is to try and understand these skills and understand emotions and be able to engage. And we have to constantly do these online courses as we look to develop ourselves in 2040. Now is my great grandma's birthday. She's 125, so you can tell the age of people is getting a little bit older. And I decide, do you know what? We've got holograms now, but I'm going to get this VR headset. She loves it. She remembers loving it back in the 2030s, 10 years ago. She's still using it, so whatever. I'm going to get it out, and she is going to get a little memory from a family holiday. We were able to do a little 360 video from a family holiday, so I'll send that to her on that old headset. And I say, don't worry, Gram, we're going to be able to go on a trip, and we're going to go to the experience pods. I'm going to book some experience pods for you, and we're going to go there, and we're going to go watch the original Marvel movies, you know, the original Avengers. None of this remake nonsense. It's not the same. And we're going to watch it in these 360 pods. So you actually get to be in the movie. And they're not as good with the originals. They are better with the 360 immersion cinema for the newer Marvel movies. But, you know, she prefers the old ones. So fair enough, we'll just let her experience the old ones as we go in there. So retro is really popular at this time. I think with everything that's changed by 2040, we're a lot more comforted by the fact that we can go back to those old nostalgic comforts. So I thought, do you know what? Great grandma's birthday, we'll take her back, we'll go in these immersion pods, and we'll experience what that looks like. Now I finished work for the day. I mean, it's 3 p.m, but I've been able to chat to my grandma, so that takes a little bit of time. I'm going to meet my friends at the local bar. Again, these lower level jobs are no longer needed, and actually you can get more from the automation. So you can order it all through your personal assistant. So my same virtual assistant that I use at home is able to order my drinks for me, and they are paid automatically from my digital account and delivered to us by robotics assistants. Now, food service is also done a lot by robots, but it's not completely changed. It's more for hygiene that they're able to do that, but they're still human chefs making human foods. It's not quite 3D printed yet, so we still grab a bit of a bite to eat to kind of hang out. And we start discussing, me and my friend were like, do you know what? It's been a bit of a crazy year. Work has been a bit mad. Do you know what? Let's plan our next wellness holiday. Let's do it. Me as well. And I'm starting to plan our trip. We're thinking, well, we need to focus on ourselves, focus on our personal well-being, and focus on doing something different. Where's the noise? And focus on doing something that makes us feel better, transform ourselves. So we book onto a moving resort. These are brand new. They've just arrived. This is one of the first ones in the world, but we're pretty buzzing to go and try it out. And it's actually the whole resort moves from one location to another. You know, so the whole thing moves about, and it's all about improving yourself and being with nature and coming together. And it's less about flying to different locations and seeing different things. It's all about improving yourself. So we book onto one of them. We've never been on one before, but it looks pretty exciting. The last holiday we went on was a staycation, because staycations are super popular now. But we did add in the VR extensions, so we were able to experience a little bit of Rome, even though we were, you know, just in Edinburgh. But it still was pretty handy to get an experience like that. So we start booking our holiday. It's ridiculously expensive, but luckily we can pay it off over a bit of time from that. But as we're heading home, actually, my friend's starting to feel a little bit ill. So, you know, we think, well, what do we do? So we nip by a medical station. Luckily, you don't necessarily need to book an appointment. You just pop into these medical stations, and your first interaction is with a virtual doctor. So you get to discuss and diagnose any issues, but actually the virtual doctor, the augmented reality or artificial intelligence, thinks there's something going on here. So they transfer through to an immediate call with a human doctor, and the machine is able to do a quick scan on the spot, a bit like I remember there was photo booths in shopping centres. It's a bit like that. And actually they've discovered a really fast acting disease. You know, these diseases are a lot more aggressive. Humans have been experimenting with genetic treatments, and actually that has unstirred a lot of pretty intense diseases and problems that you might have. So unfortunately, he may only have days to live if this keeps going. You know, it's really starting to have an impact on his organs. But luckily, and now this is my big caveat, optimistic for 2040, I hope so, but maybe not, is luckily the doctors are able to quite quickly find a solution to this potential problem. And we're able to go to the mobile pharmacy and he gets nanotech pills. And they're able to instantly target the disease and rewrite them overnight to be able to attack the dangerous cells. We have a lot better understanding of the human body. We're able to get a clearer visualization of where things are and do a lot more targeted treatment. There's been a lot of genetic research into this, and actually it's a lot more interesting and a lot more safe what we're able to do with these different technologies that are coming on board. Medical service in the UK is luckily still free, obviously paid by taxes and international exports. Other countries, unfortunately, not so much, but we still have quite a good treatment in terms of our healthcare sector. And now I'm heading home. I've had a really exhausting day. It's been pretty busy, and I start to download today's news. So I try to do this only once a day because it's constantly around us. It's on the billboards when you're walking to places. It's on transport. It's in the pods when you're driving to work. But I decided to download the news, and they're telling me the latest stories. Civil wars, unfortunately, have developed in some African nations because there's continued fights over rights to water. That's not just in African nations. We've seen that all around the world. Access to water has become the absolute key point. It's the target for different terrorist threats because there is a lot more demand for what water we need, particularly with the food production having to go up. And now there's a lot more demand, particularly in areas that have less access. The landlocked countries are really struggling with that. So pretty scary stuff there. But luckily, the Mars base has just grown its first food. So back in the very late 2030s, we had our first manned mission to Mars. There's still no colonies out there. There's still no, houses on the moon or anything like that, but there is a nice scientific project and they have been able to grow food, which is pretty impressive to be able to get on out there. And another one is Japan has had to temporarily shut down all of its internet after an illegal artificial intelligence was detected. Now, this is, I think, of the news of the day, this is the bit that's scaring me the most, because artificial intelligence has this immense power. It's not controlled by humans. It makes its own decisions. And if it's able to get out there, it can start, changing everything. It gets access to transport systems, information, and this one is a rogue one. And luckily, cyber police in Japan have been able to track it down and detect it. But in order to do that, it hits a firewall and boom, the whole country's internet has to go out because they just have to disconnect it while they're able to get it out of every single device in the country. Because if they kept the internet on, there is potential that it could eventually save backups, versions of itself, and do negative things around the world. So luckily cyber police have been able to get that, but pretty inconvenient for the Japanese people at the moment. So I'm heading home and I'm actually going to check my energy earnings because luckily, while we haven't got most of climate change under control, and unfortunately industry hasn't quite managed to keep up with the promises made, domestically, climate change implementation has gone a little bit better. We are all luckily powered by wind, solar, or water. And actually that means now that after about 2035, the infrastructure was paid off for it. So luckily electricity is free now. We don't need to pay for it because it comes from natural sources. Some days I actually even get paid for supplying electricity to industry, who unfortunately still use up a lot of electricity that isn't quite renewable. But unfortunately, my big cost may not be electricity costs or gas costs for heating my house. It comes from water. We have to pay a lot more for getting clean, safe water and waste, because now there are taxes on if you dispose of waste, not recycle it, then it costs a lot of money. So I'm keeping an eye on all of that, making sure it's all sorted, and no electricity earnings today, but that's fair enough. No bills either. And at the end of my day, I'm coming to the end, and I'm heading to my bed to recharge for the next day. And my virtual assistant is able to reflect on my body rhythms, and it starts asking me questions. It goes, "Hello, Edward, how's your day been? What's been happening to you?" And it starts to have a conversation about my mental health, and it starts offering some guidance. It's become my personal therapist to make sure I'm doing okay, feeling okay. And it makes sure that my bed is the right temperature, that the lighting is right, the sounds are right, to allow me to fall asleep. And luckily, it keeps me well rested, so that it wakes me up at the time my body is best rested for the next day. And as I'm having a conversation, it realizes that maybe my mental health isn't doing so great tonight. It kind of gives it an average score. It tracks all my data to make sure I'm doing okay. And it says, "Do you know what, just call your mum. It was your grandma's birthday today. Call her as well and just say goodnight." So I'm able to go to bed, have a quick conversation, and start feeling better and refreshed for the next day. And in a nutshell, that is us through the time machine into 2040. So, okay, so crazy predictions in there. Not all of that is probably going to happen by 2040, but what I hope you have got a little bit from that, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail about how this might affect you, is there some sparks of inspiration? You've joined the course at RGU, or your existing studies at RGU, or you're interested in being an entrepreneur. How can some of these technologies spark our innovations? When you're going through every single module, how can you make sure that you are planning for the future, that you are designing solutions for the future, that your coursework is interpreting what it could be? So maybe you've got some inspirational ideas, or maybe you could design some of these technologies or businesses that could be seeing me through my day in 2040. Now, I imagine not all of that will happen, but it's all based on research reports, articles that are futuristic predictions of what could happen. So if we come back to today, why is all of this important? But in 2020, it's Freshers Week. We want to have a good time. There's some good things going to happen in the future. There's some scary things going to happen in the future. And our job as a university is to solve them, is to make some impact, to make a difference. So as we come through 2020 and you're becoming a student, not only are you here to solve the problems of your course, but you're here to solve problems that affect all of us. So our department, EIG, are really interested in trying to come up with innovative ways to solve these future problems. And your big challenges are including artificial intelligence and big data. So how do we make sure, if you're studying computing or literally any other school, Google's, Alexa's, all of these things are becoming so infiltrated in our lives, is that a good thing? When should we use them and when shouldn't we use them? When should they be implemented? Amazon have just bought a house company. So Amazon will be 3D printing houses. And they've done that because of Alexa. Because if they can use Alexa in the house to control your lights, your sound, your toilet paper, your food in the kitchen, the stuff in your fridge, Amazon becomes in power over your entire home experience. And maybe your electricity's through them, your TV's through them, your music's through them, and they capture your revenue for that. And they become indispensable. It's quite easy to unplug an Alexa and shove it out if you don't like it anymore. It's less easy to move house. So these companies are already thinking 10, 15, 20, 40 years in the future. And that's without even coming on to Elon Musk and Tesla and all sorts of stuff like that. So artificial intelligence, you may think it's only to do with the computing folk, but even if you're studying Gray's School of Art, this still impacts you. There's still technology out there today being created that you will have to interact with. Aging population, we touched on my 125-year-old great grandma, this is going to be a massive difference. All of these robots and automation are going to be required because we're all going to be living much longer, but also having less and less children. So who is going to be waiters or taxi drivers or delivery drivers? Well, it needs to be automated, not because we want to get rid of jobs, but because there won't be enough people in certain countries anyway. In some countries, there'll be more to do those jobs. So we need to automate in those spaces, but there's also a different role for us in terms of designing, creating, innovating more and more. The way we move about the world and the impacts of climate change, all really massive challenges that every single course at RGU is responsible for at least thinking about. You don't have to solve climate change, but if you are studying, accounting and finance, how could environmental taxation make companies act better? You know, how could someone in architecture make sure that buildings are designed in the most eco-friendly way possible? These are all things that we're responsible for integrating into our studies. It's because this may sound crazy, all these mental ideas, and I'm just the enthusiastic entrepreneurship guy who will send you emails throughout your years at RGU, but it's because things are happening so fast, really, really fast. So if you think about the telephone, it took 75 years for 50 million people to use that, okay? Cars, 62 years, electricity, 46 years, credit cards, etc. 50 million people, so many people. Now, of course, as time has gone on, there's more people on the planet, but internet, 7 years, Facebook, 4 years, WeChat, 1 year, Pokemon Go, 19 days. 19 days to reach 50 million people. That's insane. That's insane levels of innovation. And that's how fast things are changing right now. If you launch a product or service, or if your company fails to respond to a product or service, then 19 days might be all it takes to destroy whole industries or create whole new ones. So you might be going out there as a journalist, and all of a sudden, you know, someone invents the Pokemon Go of news. You know, it becomes an app that gives you non-fake news. You know, it's all verified or something. And they've come up with a business model. All of a sudden, overnight, traditional newspapers, traditional TV channels are dead, and like Pokemon Go, it's all there. There is obviously lessons from Pokemon Go, because I don't know who's still using it after the boom it had, but that's how fast things are moving, and we have to be aware and adaptive to all of that. But think, this seems crazy, but 20 years ago, we're looking 20 years in the future, but 20 years ago, things like almost everything on this iPhone screen didn't exist. You know, we had these Nokia phones, we had big chunky cameras. If you wanted to see a film, you would get the DVD or the CD. There wasn't these digital technologies. Now, every part of our lives, the way we listen to music, the way we entertain ourselves, the way we communicate with our family members, the way that we pay for things, contactless, all of that has changed in less than 20 years. And most of you who are freshers this year weren't even born when this phone was around. You've only ever known iPhones. But if that's happened in just 20 years, or just 10 years for some of it, iPhone was only 2007, what will happen in the next 10 to 20 years? And it'll be half the time that it took. So this is why studying at university is very exciting, because you get to design and solve all of these solutions. Tinder's the big way that we date now. Was not the case 20 years ago, wasn't the case 10 years ago. What will it be in a few years' time then? And of course, with that retro thing, some of these things may come back around. The 3210 is coming back around again as a kind of limited edition model. And we do crave things from our childhood again. So not to say things like vinyl are on the boom again. So not to say things will die out, but you have to be aware of when the curve is coming back up. Not the second curve, nothing to do with that. Let's hope it doesn't, but to do with technology anyway. And again, here's another articulation of how fast things are going. Look how fast all of these innovations happened in just that small period of time. But from printing press to Kindle took hundreds of years. Whereas all of a sudden now we are able to go from iPad to 3D visual holographs in the space of just a few weeks. So pretty important that you get your head around these crazy things. So how does this affect you? What's going to change? Well, our job at EIG, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group, is to do classes like this and workshops to give you those extra skills that will help you go into a job interview or start your own company to be able to get your feet running with these crazy ideas. So that means working in teams is far more important. You have to be able to collaborate. The people from computing doing the coding need to be able to speak to the greys who are doing the designing and work together quicker. No longer is it a separate professions. We have to work together. We have to solve real problems. We have to learn by doing things, which is why RGU is so practical. We have to be creative. We have to come up with ideas. We have to be able to lead, because the jobs aren't necessarily going, is my prediction at least. Other people say differently. Robots will come, but our job is to create them, to understand the ethics, to understand how we use things, to design the new solutions, not, you know, completely be outrun by the robots. And obviously this is just 5 years. We don't have the current predictions for it, but completely differently, you know, the skills in terms of what used to be important, quality control or, you know, negotiation, people management, etc., have shuffled about. It's critical thinking. Things like emotional intelligence weren't there before. Now our job is to deal with people, to help people, to understand people, to be able to be creative. That's went from 10th most important skill to the 3rd most important skill. So how are you creating and coming up with ideas? And that's things like the programs that we run in terms of our skill sessions can help you build those creativity skills that you may need. And whether you're applying to universities like postgrads or anything like that, applying for jobs, setting up a business, that's when these skills are going to come in handy. And the final thing is, beyond the technology and the type of trends, we've already seen from my predictions of the future that the way we work is very different. We used to have that one career, 9 to 5, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, holiday entitlement, boom, 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 very lovely. That way of working is dying. You know, it's not going to happen. We have seen at the university in just 6 months, people who would never have been able to use Zoom or Microsoft Teams are now using it to teach all their classes. You know, we're now working at different hours. We now have these devices, these phones giving us notifications all day, every day. It's harder to turn off. So what does working look like in the future? And if you're going to be a manager, if you're studying business or you're setting up a company, you've got to make decisions. So we're going to have more than one job. We're going to have many careers. We're going to work, you know, probably all hours of the day, potentially. I know I'm checking emails at God knows what time at night. We're never really going to fully retire, unfortunately. I don't think the retirement model is going to work. So what does that look like? Does that mean having multiple side hustles that you can turn up and down? When you get into your 80s, you're still making your nice craft products at home, but actually you don't need to do a 9 to 5 in the office anymore. You know, we're able to balance our careers a lot more. We're able to be a lot more creative, and we're able to work freelance when we need to. You know, it doesn't mean if you lose your job, that's it. We have skills, we have talent. We do not need to just go out there and get one full-time job anymore. We're able to mix and match and be more creative in our endeavors. And the jobs that we are going to be going into haven't probably even been created yet. So my job as a drone controller or drone pilots, you know, barely exist at the moment, but now will be mainplace when there's hundreds of them in the sky. You know, solar energy technicians or data architects, or, you know, personal privacy advisor, like a lawyer who makes sure you're aware of what data people have on you, 3D printing technicians, digital rehab counselor. So how do you make sure that you're not addicted to this in the same way that people might have been addicted to drugs in the past? Are we addicted to Facebook, Instagram, the likes? How will that impact us? Lots of fun things. So in a nutshell, in a crazy whirlwind way, that is how I, Edward Pollock, Startup Coordinator at RGU, have thought about what could happen in the future. There's a lot of trends in there, a lot of changes, but hopefully it gives you insight into how your university life could shape out and what could potentially happen. And our challenge to you as the students of RGU is to work with us in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group to design that innovation of the future. If you spot a problem, if you think something needs innovated in your industry, come to us and we will help you out to design solutions, be entrepreneurs and be innovators and make that difference in the future. So hopefully you found that interesting. For the last, there's only a couple of minutes left, but if you are interested in, I would like to hear your thoughts. For the people who've asked in the chat, sorry, I've not been answering your questions. It is, yes, this has been recorded, so you'll be able to watch this back later if you can't get into it. And if you have access to that recording, I will send it all out. But what I'm going to show next is, if you want, you can go on your phone and you can go to Mentimeter, menti.com actually. Let's see if I can open this up. And I want to hear your predictions for the future. Let's see what your future ideas might look like. Sorry, let's make it load up. And you're going to be able to type in with that code and be able to suggest what you think a good innovation for the future could be. So where's the little thing? There it is. Okay, so if you go to menti.com and type in 675432362, and you can see up at the top there, and then please type in what your prediction for life in 2040 could look like. So Oliver's already said cures for chronic diseases like diabetes. That would be amazing. That would be really cool. Maybe there's people who are studying in health courses who could be interested in doing that. You never know. Yes, you can get a drone license now. So maybe you could be the drone pilots of the future. You know, right now drones are there for photography, or they're there for, sensors, scanning things. But they're not necessarily being used for deliveries yet. They're not transporting people. So that drone license could be even more important. Okay. Hopefully, oh, there we go. Less interaction between humans. Ooh, that's a scary, possibly negative one in there. So how could that change things? Interesting. Feel free to dive in with your thoughts. Again, we're all opening our minds to potential different possibilities. Flying in the air. I've not mentioned jetpacks. That would be pretty cool to have a jetpack on the go. What have we got? No cook breakfast. Oh, Huel. Oh, yes. So I don't know if anyone's seen that. So that's a startup company that, well, there might not be more than a startup now, where you just drink liquid. I'm not convinced about that. I think I still like the texture, slice of toast in the morning. I don't know. Augmented reality for video conferencing rather than this screen life. So maybe, instead of, right now I just see a bunch of gibbery names and you just see my face screaming enthusiastically at you. Maybe we'll be in a virtual classroom at some point in the future. Pizza rockets, I like it. For some reason, the thing that comes to my head when I see the word pizza rockets is just Toy Story. Is it Toy Story? What's it? Pizza Planet is the delivery place in Toy Story. I just imagine the little rocket on top of the car actually delivers the pizza by the future. Oh, prosthetics. That's quite an interesting one. We haven't really covered that before. So yeah, how could that shape the future? So I don't know what courses everyone's from, but maybe you've taken some inspiration to take that to your course. An augmented reality museum of experiences, digital art and content creation for entertainment. Excellent. Yeah, I think entertainment of the future is going to be really interesting. We're used to this sort of static experience where we just sit and watch or sit and observe. But could we be creating the art live? Could we be the art? Could we be the entertainment? There could be something in that. Meals around nutrition needs, drone policing, very interesting. VR gaming. Yeah, a way to store your thoughts and dreams. That's pretty intense. Obviously, Elon Musk, I don't know if you know him, he's the founder of Tesla and PayPal and all sorts of things. He's got, I don't know what they're called. They're like brain reading chips or something like that. Mind control technology. So again, all of this sounds super crazy and futuristic, but the more we look at it, the more we think about it, actually, a lot of the technology is starting to come around now. So yeah. Ooh, Spy Kids reference there. Wow, I wonder if Spy Kids, how old is that? It's almost like as old as the freshers this year, I think. That's pretty weird. Anyway, yes, microwave instant meals, space meals, that'll be interested. Chips implanted into anything. I've seen on TikTok, there's some people who've actually got like RFID chips. So, like contactless payments. They've got a little chip in their wrist and they use it for unlocking doors and stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I guess it's like a tattoo. It's not that different to a tattoo, but yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Interesting, some very useful predictions. Thank you for those who've typed them in. I think I've got another question. Is there a technology you're most excited for? Feel free to post it in there. If not, don't worry, you are welcome to leave. If you have hopefully enjoyed today's session, we have other sessions coming up for the rest of the week, so make sure you head to the innovation webpage. But I'm interested to gather your thoughts on this. If you want to type your comments in there. Is there technology you're most excited for? Oh yes, Lauren is suggesting someone ends up chopping off your arm to get into your house. Yeah, crime in the future. How could that be sorted? But then we have so much data. Is, with contact tracing and these apps, are we going to be a lot more aware of where people are or what they're doing? Excellent. Ooh, self-driving cars has come up there. Very interesting. I've not mentioned that so much. We've got the pods, but, this is becoming such more mainstream technology. How will people learn to drive? Smell-o-vision. That's quite interesting. So maybe we have much more immersive experiences where you're able to smell and taste and see things rather than just watching. And maybe that opens up, for people who are, blind or unable to sense things. What have we got? Drones, we've got breakfast technology. The breakfast technology is very interesting. Internet of Things, IoT, everything's connected to each other. Air taxis, cashless society. I'm already happy with that. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but there's a lot of innovation to come from COVID-19. COVID-19 has been a nightmare, but there has been some good things. You know, I have to say, paying everything with contactless doesn't bother me at all. Better hygiene in the world where you don't need to, you know, have people coughing on you. Not so fussed about that. Not having people sat right next to you in cinemas or in the restaurants doesn't sound too bad. The trouble with a lot of these measures is the business model that goes with it. Particularly, I also teach in event management, so that's our big dilemma, is how do we incorporate the innovations of COVID into the future? Because I think a lot of this needs to live on in some way. So yeah, there's positives, but also natural negatives. Cryptocurrency, I don't know if anyone's ever done this, like if anyone's ever got any Bitcoin. I'm not entirely sure how it works. So I think that's a little while off coming in, but it's definitely there. Bot controlled gadgets, etc. Very exciting. What's the next one I've got here? Skills most important for the future. So thinking of yourselves, if you take anything away from this presentation, is during your time at RGU, whatever you have left, what skills do you want to have? You know, if you were planning for this crazy predicted future I've given out, what do you think you need to develop? And you never know, maybe this means that we will set up a class to teach you these skills in the next few weeks. If you give us some good suggestions, and we'll be able to help you out. Machine learning. Yeah, how do you do that? How do you design? I would love it. I don't know how many times I've had to like set up Outlook meetings or add stuff to a spreadsheet. If I could just make my devices learn that that's just what I need it to do, that would be a pretty cool skill. How do I introduce that technology into my day-to-day life? You know, imagine you actually knew how to use that cover page or contents page or reference page functions on your coursework documents. That would be pretty handy. It's all there. The technology exists. We just don't have the skills to be able to use it better. Think how quickly that would make writing coursework if all of a sudden all of your references were just done, sorted. You know, there's definitely something around referencing that'll need a bit of work. Out of the box thinking, use of technology, team working, coding, excellent. Lots of really good skills in there that hopefully will help you learn. Creativity, we will definitely do our best with some creative thinking challenges and ideas around that. Multitasking, don't have any tips for that, but I'm sure we could juggle a few things. Trying to like both present and accept people into the Zoom call is a bit of multitasking there. Excellent. We have 1 more minute left of today's session, so thank you for that. I've given you some selections here, but I'd love to see, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the world? And again, this might give us some insight into some sessions we can run for you on how we can try and solve these challenges and what we need to try and get done. So, oh, lots of votes for the climate change in there. Definitely. Oh, but artificial intelligence is interesting too. Okay, big challenges facing us here. It's very exciting looking at the future, but it's also daunting too. Unfortunately, you will have heard in the presentation, in 2040, I'm not convinced that we will have solved climate change. I just don't think we're moving fast enough now, and I count myself personally for that. You know, by the way, this is I'm drinking from a plastic bottle, but it's a plastic bottle I've had for about 6 months, so there's still it's not a fresh one. But yeah, interesting ones. Aziz, I think you maybe had a question in there. Running out of time. The last thing is, if you had any open questions that you wanted to share, that's us at the end of the session today, but you're welcome to share questions and I'll try and answer them back to you. And thank you so much for taking part in today's Innovation Masterclass, all about what the future will look like. Hopefully we've sparked some innovation, Tomorrow's event, we will see you at, if you're joining us, 2 p.m. on Zoom. All of our events are 2 p.m. this week, and we have a social event, a networking session where you can meet with different people. We'll be playing some games, and you'll be meeting some of our entrepreneurs and find out more about the specific things that we do. On Wednesday, we have a entrepreneurship themed pub quiz. Well, not in a pub quiz, where you can test your entrepreneurial skills and knowledge. And on Friday, we have a virtual escape room. Can you save the startup and solve the clues? So thank you so much for joining us. We will see you very soon. And if you have any questions, please fire them up on the slides. Thank you very much. We will see you very soon.